Hi everyone, this is Grace, and today I'll be walking you through how I made this beginner snowflakes set. So let's go. Now, this is a beginner version of, well, not a beginner version. I have an advanced version of the snowflakes set, just called snowflakes. This is my beginner snowflakes class. Then the other one is just called snowflakes. It's an online cookie decorating class. I've taken it upon myself this year to create kind of a triad of Christmas and winter options that are beginner and advanced. So I have this same concept with candy canes and Christmas trees. I have an advanced version and a beginner version. What I love about this beginner version is that it is one consistency and two colors. Like, how much can we love that? One consistency, two colors, one cookie cutter. Just makes my heart so happy. So the colors here too, something that I focused on with the beginner Christmas trees, beginner candy canes, and beginner snowflakes was that I wanted the colors to be straight out of the bottle. I didn't want there to be any finessing with the colors, easy peasy lemon squeezy. This one is royal blue, straight out of the bottle, just a lower saturation. You could do it even less than what I did here. You could make it more of like a really faint pastel. I just wanted like a little more contrast. To be honest though, I wanted it somewhere a little less than this because if you've seen my beginner winter class, that's also the same blue. And I wanted it to be a bit more differentiated from that because that one is it's like relatively saturated. But this one's good enough. So the other one's like the candy canes is red straight out of the bottle. The green is leaf green, again, straight out of the bottle. I mean, you can use any green you have, but the point is, excuse me, clear my throat and drink some tea. So this cookie cutter here, I'm actually pretty proud of this. I worked with Amanda at Brighton Cutters to design this, not from scratch, but we took one of my favorite snowflake cutters from a different company and adjusted the angles in the corners and the tips because I found with that cookie cutter, while I loved how it looked, my dough was constantly getting stuck in the cookie cutter. And when I say stuck, like there's a difference between picking up your cutter and having the entire cookie stick in it. Like that's one thing. I don't know if I'm making any sense. No, I'm gonna divert from that. Okay. The point being, I don't know what she did exactly because I'm not the cookie cutter person, but she changed the angles such that this is a lot easier to use. It's like this beautiful shape, but it's a lot easier to use. I'm going to come back to the shape in a second because I want to talk about this design. This is the candy cane technique, or what I've called the candy cane technique. I have done this on a few of the candy cane sets, and I just really wanted to also do it on the snowflake and the Christmas trees. So yes, I did find a way to do it. The key here is that you want to make sure you're grabbing the outer edge of the dot. The other thing is that you have to go in opposite directions. So with the other applications is a little bit easier because you can like go around it, if that makes sense. But this is like an enclosed shape where you have to go one way and then go the other way. So the other thing on this shape is that this is a relatively, well, no, I would say there are kind of three shapes of snowflakes out there these days, three general shapes of snowflake cutters. One is like this, but very pointy. One is on the other end of the spectrum, and it's like really fat. Like it's almost like a circle with just little nubbins at the end. And then this is my personal favorite because I love the softness of the angles. But you still get the true definition of the six arms or whatever they're called. But it's not the pointiness of the typical pointy one. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. If you've done the advanced version of this class, you know how annoying though this cutter shape can be to outline, because when you have these rounded ends, that means that you're not making contact at corners, which means that you're guiding the icing in the air with your bag and your hand. which is definitely more challenging. The nice thing about the beginner class here is that since we're doing a one consistency outline and flood, we can like get away with a little bit more. So you'll see me when I flood this next one, you will see me make contact at all of the points. And that's okay when doing this technique. So here we go. Contact, 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 contact. So you can see when I initially pipe it, it actually has pointiness to it. But since we're using a one consistency, when it settles out, the pointiness softens. So I thought that was okay. And it is easier to flood, it is easier to outline when you are able to touch down in corners. That's just my sidebar on outlining. So this one here, anyway, I digress. Okay, what else can I talk about? So the beauty of a snowflake set too is like no two snowflakes are alike. So take these 8 designs and have fun. Like do what I'm doing and then let your imagination fly. Like especially with these wet on wet designs like this one here. This is what I've put together as what I think is like appropriate for the skill level and the consistency that we're working with, but do whatever makes your heart happy. I also recommend like next level here is to start and end your 2 circles at the same spot always where you're going to pull through right here. So it's always messy at the start and end of a circle. But if you do it at the point that you're going to pull through, ain't nobody gonna see that, y'all. Okay. So this first one we're pulling out and we don't need to clean off the scribe. So it makes it so much easier. But for the next one, we do need to clean off our scribe before every pull. And that's because if you don't, you have icing left over on the scribe and you'll have a little bit of white inevitably. And so then you'll get like white icing outside of the line pull, which to me like defeats the purpose of this really awesome seamless look. I call that the flower. I don't know, it's giving flower vibes. This one, I have no idea what's next. This is the one kind of not problem, but when I'm doing like editing or voiceover for one shape sets, it's like, okay, takes me a minute to know which one's which. I have a hunch this is the Crackle. As always with a beginner class, y'all, I always gotta do me some Crackle. Like, crackle it up, yo. And it just made sense to do it on all white. The key with Crackle is that a couple of things. 1, you want to wait long enough. 2, you want to make sure you're cracking and not puncturing. And 3, you want to make sure that your cracks are close enough together. So the first point, if you start cracking, I wait 10 minutes and then I see how it is. If you start cracking and it's an indent, that just means it hasn't dried enough. If you let your icing sit for at least 30 minutes and it's still not crackling, it's just indenting, then something is wrong with your icing. Sorry. The next thing is to make sure you're cracking and not indenting. If you have icing on the end of your tool, that means that you have punctured the surface of the icing, which is not the goal. And then the second thing is to make sure your cracks are touching. You don't want them to look like individual polka dots, but you want to have each crack connect with one another. Hopefully that description makes sense. Okay, this one here is for all the people that complain about it being too much icing. But also, it's just fun, I think, with a snowflake especially, to do a very bare bones design. Now, you could leave this as is. We're going to put sanding sugar on it. You do not need to do that. I think, if I recall correctly, are we covering the whole thing? Okay. I thought maybe we just did like a sprinkling. That's another thing you could do too. This one, we are actually covering the whole thing. So you do need to make sure you're really creating enough like space in between the dots and the lines. So if your tip of your bag, for example, is like way too thick, then you either need to do fewer lines, which you really can't do with this design already. Like it's already pretty bare bones. Or you just need to do a sprinkling of sanding sugar instead of covering the whole thing. Just a sidebar. What are we doing now? I think this is the marble one is my guess. As I mentioned at the beginning, I do color my white icing. I just use white food coloring. the super pros, and I feel like it's more common with buttercream. People will use like the tiniest bit of purple because typically what it is your icing is too yellow because you've used either butter and buttercream or uh, vanilla extract. I don't use vanilla extract. I use lemon juice, which still very slightly tints my icing, but I would say less so than vanilla. But by adding the purple, you are adding the opposite end of the color wheel. Yellow and purple are on opposite sides. And when you do that, they like cancel each other out basically. I mean, if you mix those two colors together, you'll create brown, but somehow, just trust me, it will make your icing white. But I am always too paranoid to do that with royal icing. So I just use white food coloring. I like Americolor and Chef Master are my favorite brands. And again, I like to do a gel. So this is my messy polka dot, also called a marble. You could totally leave this as polka dots, but I like the marble effect, especially on a snowflake. Like, I feel like it's giving snow flurries. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, this last cookie here, I will say, so every once in a while when I'm filming, I make a mistake. And I forget to film something, or something you probably may or may not notice is that I'm actually like focusing the camera. So when the cookie is just down, it always stays in focus. And that's why like when my hand comes across the screen, it doesn't suddenly change the focus to the piping bag. It's always on the cookie, which I think is like filming cookies 101. A lot of people make the mistake of not force focusing or whatever that term is. I don't know. But that means if I'm picking the cookie up to like at a higher level to cover it in sugar, I have to change the focus as I'm doing it. And as you'll see in a minute, when I put the cookie back down, I forgot to put the focus back on the cookie. So let's see if we can see the transition. Sometimes it's a little clumsy, but my video editor is quite good at making this look better these days. So you can see it's a little out of focus, and there the cookie goes into focus. Because the cookie is so much higher now, it's like at least 6 inches higher, that I can't just keep the same focus level because it's focusing much farther down the camera. I use my iPhone, by the way. I do not have a fancy camera. And then here I put it back down, and this is the moment where I have to remember to refocus it. And guess who forgot to refocus it? Yeah. And yeah, unfortunately, I didn't realize this until I had done everything, filmed everything, photographed everything. But you know what? It's not the end of the world. There's the finished product. And that's it, my friends. That is my beginner snowflakes class. You could do these designs on a lot of other shapes. You could do them on circles. You could do them on anything else with like 6 sides, 5 sides, 4 sides, 3 sides. Yeah. As always, I hope y'all enjoyed watching this. You learned a thing or two, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.